you check the children? Show a little match sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is what
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird, here to do a bit more Godzilla coverage. On the channel, we recently did a review of Godzilla Minus One, and then we did a trailer reaction to Godzilla X Kong. And now I've got a bit more with the channel's review of Monarch: Legacy of Monsters. And this was a 10-episode series that just finished on Apple Plus today. I wanted to make sure to watch it and get my review up as soon as possible, partly because on the channel we are starting our 10th anniversary week-long celebration this Sunday, going through till next Sunday, one new episode a day in accordance with the old format that we did when we first started the channel. So that should be fun. But I want to talk about Monarch because I am a huge Legendary Monsterverse fan. I think that, unfortunately, the last one, Godzilla vs. Kong, got a little bit too far into the silly territory, and it doesn't look like Godzilla X Kong is going to be exiting that territory anytime soon. So, you know, that is what it is. But this is a continuation of this Legendary Monsterverse, but this continuation takes place entirely between Godzilla from 2013 and Godzilla King of the Monsters in 2019. So this story actually takes place, parts of it take place in 1959, but the rest of it takes place in 2015 for the most part. And I'm going to be careful not to spoil things for you guys. It is a 10-episode series, so each episode is like 40 to 50 minutes. So it is an extended series to watch. And all in all, starting with my overall thoughts, if you want to know, is it worth your time to watch it? It depends. It depends. If you're okay with a much more human-focused story, right? Because usually in these kaiju films, the monster is about, 50 to 60% of the movie, and the human story is usually like 30 to 40%. This is very much 90% human and 10% or less kaiju stuff. It's just exploring how Monarch as a company, as an institution came to be, and it follows two different groups of people's story, one in 1959 and then one in the 2015 timeline. So if you're okay with that and are interested in that, with the monsters just being things that are talked about, except for literally 2 to 5 minutes per episode at most. Usually it's around the 2 to 3 minutes worth of monsters per episode, and that's usually concentrated in one sequence. So if you don't care that much about that stuff, then sure, give this a try. But if you want to see a bigger monster to human ratio, this ain't it, friend. This ain't it. I am glad I watched it. I will say that much, because I'm a completionist. I like to know the whole lore of something. If I watch a movie and I liked it, I will watch every sequel that comes out, even if they are worse and worse and worse, because I'm hoping that they can do a really good one again. Like Saw is a really great example of that. Much more diminishing returns as we got into the higher numbers, and then 10 ends up being one of the best entries in the series. I guess same thing for Godzilla. I mean, we were 33 Toho movies in before we got what a lot of people consider the best Godzilla movie, myself included, with Godzilla Minus One. So this is not necessarily a return to form for the Legendary Monsterverse. I would not say that. This is definitely leaning into the human story, trying to tell the story of Monarch. And it's just not that interesting. It's an okay series that I'm glad I watched once. I will not revisit again unless I just probably will go to YouTube and see the edited together monster bits from the series, and that's pretty much what I'll watch. I just didn't end up caring too much about either of the human stories, and I will say that later in the series, if you want to consider this a spoiler, I apologize, but if you watched Godzilla versus Kong and you saw how into the hollow earth of it all they got into, this is basically an origin story for that. Like, it's how a lot of other people first find out about hollow earth, even though it's years before it happens in Godzilla versus Kong, but whatever. The timelines are confusing in the MonsterVerse with Legendary already, with just like 4 movies and a TV series in. And the timing, the time stuff in this show was also a bit confusingly presented at times. But, you know, ultimately you grasp basically what's going on, but, you know, it's not the clearest out of the gate. I will say that story-wise, this is what it's about, right? 2 different groups of people, as I mentioned. One group of people is a young girl named Kate, who is a school teacher. She was there in 2013 when Godzilla first attacked San Francisco. She was actually on a school bus on the bridge. I don't know if that was the Golden Gate Bridge. It might have been. But she was on the bridge with her class, and something happens that basically traumatized her tremendously. And after that, her father, who's a scientist, kind of disappeared. And it's been so long since she's seen him, she decides to go and try and track him down. She heads to Japan to try and do so, and goes to where he should be and ends up finding another family that he has. And a brother named Kentaro. Well, a half-brother named Kentaro. So they find this out. They deal with the trauma and whatnot, and then they decide to go and try and track down their both, obviously, their missing father, and try and find him and find out why he disappeared from both of their families' lives some time ago. So that's what their story is, and they end up bringing their friend along. Their friend, I think they call her May, if I'm not mistaken, even though that ends up not being her name, but whatever. That's a whole other side story of hers that we get for an episode. Yippee, you know. If you don't care about the characters, you're not going to care much about the show, I will say that. But that's one group, right? So you get Kate, you get Kentaro, and you get May going to search for Kate and Kentaro's father all across the globe. And they end up finding Kurt Russell's character, who is a man named Lee Shaw, who knows more about the Titans, right, as they call them in the universe, than anyone should. And he accompanies them on their search for their father because he knows their father. So that's what their story is. They go globetrotting, searching for the father, and end up encountering numerous Titans along the way, even though it's one per episode for, 2 to 4 minutes. Then the other story is the 1959 story, where you follow a character named Billy, played by one of the Workaholics, if you watch that show. And then also a character named, I want to make sure I get that right, Keiko. They call her Kay. And then a young version of Lee Shaw. So this is the interesting casting where Kurt Russell plays the older version of Lee Shaw, and then his son, Wyatt Russell, plays the younger version of Lee Shaw. So that was a cute thing that they did in the show. And those 3 are in 1959, and they, Bill is a scientist that is studying specifically the phenomenon. He believes that there are these creatures, and he's trying to get the proof. So he has built basically a lure for Titans that is essentially, it puts off gamma radiation, which is what the Titans go after, if you remember from the earlier Godzilla movies. So that's why they go after the nuclear weapons and stuff like that. But anyway, they're trying to prove the existence of these Titans, and they are the ones that are the impetus for the formation of Monarch as a government agency. So they're the ones dealing with a colonel of some kind who is tied into the U.S. military. And, they early on, they get at least photographic proof of a Titan. And so the government is willing to listen, but they have no proof that there are going to be more, or that they are an imminent threat of any kind. So that's what these 3 are trying to prove so that they can form Monarch as a protection agency for the globe, to monitor Titan activity and stuff like that. And then, you know, at some point, the stories kind of collide, without doing any spoilers, and that's what each of the stories are. Do they resolve interestingly? I guess the story from the past resolves interestingly. I don't know. You know, it worked okay. Like, the last episode, a lot of things were done, and it was an emotionally charged episode. There was also more, not, I wouldn't even say more effects, because it was still the 2 to 4 minute range, but that more happens with a Titan, or Titans, than has happened in the rest of the series up to that point. So there was at least that aspect of the finale that was cool. But again, it was a 2 to 4 minute sequence, and done with the Titans for the episode. But yeah, so I think it was just kind of okay, and it did leave it open to a sequel, you know, to season 2, should they get the green light for it. I imagine they might, because actually I don't know how it's doing. I don't know if it's kept enough people's interest to continue along as I did. But there is a surprise kaiju appearance at the end, if you want to call it that. I don't want to ruin it, so I won't say anything beyond that. But if you have Apple Plus, just go to the last episode and watch the last, like, 15 minutes, and you'll get the resolution to every story. And that surprise. So, surprise. Yeah. Anyway, story-wise, it just didn't knock me flat. I mean, the show is presented beautifully. They obviously threw a lot of money at it. It's very well shot, well presented, well edited. I didn't really get confused during the kaiju stuff. The monsters, there was a lot of really cool designs that we hadn't seen before. So we got to see different Titans of varying sizes that looked unlike anything we had seen, even amongst Godzilla King of the Monsters, where we got a lot of Titans. It wasn't any of those, really. So it's kind of cool from the creature design perspective. The effects were there. I didn't really, again, my eyes tend to be pretty forgiving of CG, but I didn't see any CG that pulled me out of the film, or out of the show at all. I thought everything looked great. The creatures were awesome. They interacted with everything very believably, and all that stuff was really cool. But again, at 2 to 4 minutes an episode, 10 episodes, you get, in total, for a 10-hour series, probably in total about 30 minutes worth of kaiju material. That's just the straight up truth about it. So that's unfortunate, but the show is okay. I mean, all the technical aspects are wonderful. You know, cinematography is good. The score is entertaining. The effects are great. No gore, right? Still no gore, because it's still the family friendly kaiju verse. But you know, it was just okay. Ultimately, is the most I can say about it. I don't want to go terribly further into detail, because I don't want to spoil anything. There's not a ton to spoil, and what I've said definitely does cover the majority of what the show is. It's just a matter of, do you care about that stuff? And I fear that, based on what people's criticisms were with the Legendary Monsterverse up to this point, which was largely, you don't give a crap about the human stories in any of those films. Again, Godzilla -1 was the first of these kaiju films that people really genuinely care about the human story. So when a show is predominantly the lackluster human type stories, is it going to do well? I don't know. So I don't know if it's going to get a season 2 order based on what I watched. But I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are if you watch the show. If you want spoiler talk, we're going to go live this Sunday. And if you have specific questions about the show, I can give you my spoilery answers then, because people will have had a few days to watch the finale if they want to. Any of you guys that don't want to sit through the family stuff, literally, that's the human story, is the family story. So if you don't care about that, then just watch the last 15 minutes of the last episode and you're golden. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for my review of Godzilla Monarch, Legacy of Monsters. You know, ultimately, I don't know if it's going to be worth your time. Everyone's going to have a different opinion on this. Some people might think it's a cool adventure show, even with the lack of monsters, but it doesn't stand out as that, if so. So, I don't know. I'd be curious to know what y'all's thoughts are. Go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel the way that you do. We greatly appreciate it. Until next time, though, I've been Cecil Laird, and remember, stay scared.